you can just allow me this moment of true country. I am in a garden that you'll hear no trains, no planes, no lawnmowers. As I walk along these wonderful althea bushes, we're with Marla Killian, and something has already caught my eye. Tell me about this.
Well, Annette, this is all part of my barn garden, and these are actually chimneys that were once on top of the old tobacco barn. And I've taken them and planted them with portulaca and some different types of succulents that do well without any water.
And they flank both sides of what I see above your head that says, "Welcome, friends."
Annette, welcome to my barn garden.
I feel very welcomed. I'm anxious to see your plants that you've chosen in here, and I know that there's many things tucked inside of this garden, and you actually had a footing to go by. But let's just stop right here because there's a centerpiece, this tree.
This tree is called a scarlet curls willow tree, and it was planted when it was just a tiny little start, and it has become the centerpiece of the barn garden.
Can I ask you, does it at any time, does it have a chartreuse or yellow leaf? Oh, I see a little bit of yellow stem.
It sure does, and it makes beautiful cuttings for like arrangements and things like that.
Okay.
So I like to use things that are in my garden.
If I turn you to your right over here, I see some beautiful plants in here, and even some are gone and some are now coming. I like to focus in on your blackberry lily.
Yes, those are beautiful, and the butterflies out here love it. I have all different kinds of butterflies that fly in, and they love the orange color. It attracts them along with the blanket flowers, and it started out to be a red and orange garden. And
what do you do to rejuvenate for next year? How do you keep this garden looking fresh?
What I try to do is I do a little bit of winter sowing, and I start some seedlings and tuck in seedlings as they get bigger. When I pull out plants that have spent, I will reseed those and tuck the old seedlings in the back of the garden and plant the new things up in the front. I'll pull marigolds, things that are shorter, and put them along the very front to bloom.
That way it's always pleasant looking, is it?
It's all season.
It doesn't look used up, does it?
That's true.
I think that's really a good thing.
And I look at it like this: I plant for nature out here, and so as one thing comes, another thing leaves, and so
you got to replace that pollen.
That's exactly right.
And resting places.
That's right, and places for animals to hide and birds to find seeds, and it's a year-round garden. How it became known as my barn garden was because originally a big old tobacco barn stood in this place. It was several stories high, and it was huge. And a few years ago, my husband and I had to take it down, which made me very sad. But he said we will use the barn wood in many different ways, like building our little shed, and also you can have the rest of it and make a barn garden.
Okay, so then have you had any issues with the soil for what you've done?
In a roundabout way, some areas of the garden don't do as well as others. This corner back here, they heated the barn with coal, and so there's a coal pile
residue, isn't it?
Yes, sprinkled throughout the soil. So a lot of things don't want to really grow back here. I've planted several shrubs that didn't like the soil. So last year I sprinkled a larkspur seed back here, and it took off. Just not too long ago, this whole corner was purple. The peonies seem to do fine here, and the echinacea in the back,
yeah, the native ones,
have done okay. So you just plant what works, and if it doesn't, you try something else.
Okay, and you've used, is this a native Monarda?
I believe so. I've had this come up, and also one that's called lemon balm on the other end, and it's about spent too.
One of the good things about this garden is that it doesn't really require a lot of your time, does it?
No, it doesn't. The most time's been spent working on a path through it.
Well, now that is a variety of rosemary that must be very hardy here.
It is.
What do you think it is?
I believe it's ARP.
That's what I was going to say.
ARP, ARP.
ARP.
So Yes, and it loves it. And this soil is also very dry down here, probably because it was originally packed down. And so we kind of work with what we have. And so that type of rosemary goes very well in a dry area. Siberian irises that grow well here, a lot of lilies. All the way back, I've got strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. I'm working on a lily bed in the back. There's a lot of daylilies that have just finished blooming. But
Yeah, well, it's obvious that one of the things that does happen with structures in the country and along fence rows, that it does produce a tree line. And that tree line comes on the exterior of these places. And this is just a wonderful utilization of what happened in time. And now for this time, this is a beautiful garden.
thank you.
For inspiring garden tours, growing tips, and garden projects, visit our website at volunteergardener.org or on YouTube at the Volunteer Gardener channel, and like us on Facebook.